you should start listening to this podcast early in your career. And if you're old, I'm sorry about that. You should just keep staying on as a student until you listen to the whole podcast.
It's never too late, though.
It's too late. They are doomed. No, they are.
No,
Beat that out. Okay. Well, welcome to the first episode of the Gesture Podcast. This is the Gesture team. I'm super excited to be starting this journey. We've been working on it for a while. My name's Tevin. I'm the Director of Gesture and an Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Washington, because I like really long titles. Our podcast is called Unhireable for reasons that we will explain in some depth later. But it really is about what we've discovered about how school can make you a bad employee and hinder your early career. You need to go to school, but there's things that we've learned the hard way, and we'll talk a lot about, that are really holding students back in ways that they don't realize. And we have tried to develop programs to kind of teach this to people in a school-like way, but it turns out that more school doesn't fix the problems of school. So I'm pretty excited about the chance to have an extended series of discussions about, what we've learned and how school actually works and what it actually does and what employers actually need. That's where we'll start, and what really launched our work. But mostly to kind of get some things out there that I think are not in the discourse. People aren't talking about and thinking about. And for those people who are ready, it can really change the way that you would think about your time in college. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited and a little nervous about the launch. It's the beginning, and also, maybe I'll get fired because of this. It's pretty exciting. If anyone's got a job out there, just putting it out there. Okay.
It's the reason we called it Unhireable.
Exactly. We may be literally unhireable. Maybe.
I can go next. My name is Liz Copland, and I've been on the Gesture team about 6 months now. And I'm coming to this work with some years of being an academic advisor, where I sat with students in the arts who often would come in and say, I want to do this major, but how do I get a job in this? And so in students' minds, it was always like this very linear connection between what you studied and what you were going to do. And I would often, try to describe your major doesn't mean that you're going to be X, Y, or Z. It can be a part of your life, or a lens through which you see the world. And while I think that is true, it never felt like a satisfying answer to students. And I could see it in their faces. And, you can show alumni profiles that validate people get jobs when they study X, Y, Z. But really, there's more to it than that. And sending students to career fairs or looking at their resume for them, it's not enough. And so I think that's why I'm really excited about being a part of this, is we get to dig into some of these things that I've wanted to help students with for years and wondered about myself when I was an undergraduate here. So it feels really important and very timely. And we have so many topics to talk about that I'm excited to dig into.
I feel like I can kind of build off of Liz's excitement, because I'm feeling very similar from my own student experience, especially about that linear career pathway that you talked about. But I'm Kiera Dempsey. I should introduce myself first. I graduated about 2 years ago and majored in history and psychology. Because of my two majors, I knew I didn't want to do something directly connected to either of those majors, but I was really unclear about what I wanted to do after college. And it felt like I knew what all the right things were to do, like getting an internship, having a resume, your LinkedIn. There were these check boxes, but I just never felt like I was doing them the right way, because I didn't have this end goal in mind that was really concrete. And I just really wanted that concrete advice that I'm not sure that will give, but hopefully will lead students on the right path that I felt like Gesture gave me when I found it when I was in college. And as for my role in Gesture, I've done essentially anything one could do in Gesture. I've been in every program. I've gone through a lot of the successes of the programs, in my opinion, but also I've been on, I'm sure, the other side of some of the parts of it that didn't quite work. So I'm bringing some of that student perspective, recent graduate perspective, and also learning and listening as we go along, because I'm also still only in my first 2 years post-graduation, so learning in that early career space too.
I love that, Kiera. It's totally relevant. What about you, Maile? Let's hear from Maile.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
After
I'm
Kiera
Maile.
slash Liz slash.
Yeah, I'm Maile. I am similar to Kiera, where we actually graduated around the same time, kind of early 2022. And then we both kind of got into gesture programs and interning and doing work here. And eventually we both come to be on the gesture team on the other end of it. Unlike Kiera, I came in kind of with a very specific goal in mind, but it wasn't actually very helpful. I was trying to be a computer scientist, software engineer, tech person, which is still pretty vague, but I really saw that as my goal through college was to major in computer science, get a job as a software engineer, purely because I thought it was the way to have a successful career. I knew some people, some family members, and just being in Seattle, it's a big tech hub. It's very safe, easy way, in a way, to think about what I was going to do with the rest of my life. But UW is very competitive in computer science and other areas. And so, I applied twice, didn't get in. Then I tried to go informatics because that's just the next step for a lot of students, and didn't get in there. And eventually I ended up in linguistics, which did end up being, I think, the place that I'm the most happy, because I love talking about languages and things like that. But for me, figuring that out through college was very difficult. Letting go of the notion that everything I did here mattered immensely on what I was going to do for the rest of my life in terms of career. So I think finding gesture and doing the programs here was really instrumental in that kind of shift in my trajectory in life and my mindset here. So I think that was really important, and I want that to reach more students, because whether you're trying to get into tech or if it's just figuring out, what you want to do with your art major or your history major, I think this is a really great space to figure that out. And I'm really excited to bring some of my own experience and thoughts on that as an early career professional as well. Still figuring out what I want to do with the rest of my career. To more students.
I love that. It's so relevant, too, because for me, in my role here,
Matt forgot his name. His name is Matt Erickson.
I've been working with a lot of our external partners and internal partners. So, places on campus like the Career Center or the Alumni Association or other academic units, and then externally with corporate partners like Amazon and Microsoft, different things, startups here in Seattle. And I feel like all the years that I've been here, I have so many stories from these partners about the things that students have done wrong and actually really, really been disadvantageous for their actual career development, to the point where people are like, I can't work with them, or I would never hire them, or they would never get through an interview. So how do you tell students that? It's actually, you can't tell a student that to their face, right? You will never get hired here. That's brutal.
It is brutal.
But we can talk about that here. I think that's what's really exciting, is let's talk about why an employer told us that student is never going to get hired. And unpack, is it what they did? Is it what they brought to that meeting? Is it because they had a misconception about how this place works and what they're supposed to do? Those are all topics that are contributing to that. But that's something I think I'm the most excited about. Like, behind the curtain, okay, what's really going on here?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on, I think, one of the central points of why we chose to do a podcast, which is that, it's difficult to talk to people directly about that in the context in which we find ourselves. And there is deep denial across the institution, among students, among faculty, among staff. It doesn't sell well to tell students, hey, you're not going to, it's hard for you to get a job after college. In fact, they will get jobs. That's not really the problem. But denial, honestly, among employers. We've talked to so many employers who, hey, students are great, they're so smart. And then we ask them a little more, well, tell me a little bit more about what you're hearing. Well, they're mostly smart. And would you hire them? Well, no, not really. And so you kind of have to work to dig down to past the sort of socially desirable answer that, because they don't want to say it to our face, just like we don't want to say it to students' faces. I think a space to talk about challenging things that challenge our own preconceptions. And that's really where this starts for us in our work, and where the podcast, I think, is going to start, and where everyone will have to start on their journey, which is to not so much look at school from a distance and see what's wrong with it, but to look at how we are making assumptions for ourselves. So we've gone through the journey ourselves of coming to grips with this fact.
Yeah.
Our programming in the beginning really was, hey, you're a good student, now let me help you get ready for career, and seeing all the things that didn't work to where we are now, which is if you get to graduation having only been a student, there's not a lot you can do. You can do some job prep stuff, but you can't go back in time and redo college differently. And that is essentially what we're talking about, doing your entire 4 years of college in a different way than just school. And there's no making up for that if you get to the end and all you've done is school. So you should start listening to this podcast early in your career. And if you're old, I'm sorry about that. You should just keep staying on as a student until you listen to the whole podcast.
It's never too late, though.
It's too late. They are doomed. They are.
No,
Beep that out. We need to get a beep in the first thing. It is never too late. What will happen, because in fact, what does happen, our students are smart. They do get a job. They just learn it after college. So they just wasted some time, that's all. And it's not a huge amount of time, 3, 4, 5 years.
That can
but
be
it hasn't
consequential, though.
It's very consequential.
It's expensive.
Because the growth trajectory. So if you're 3, 4 years into your career and you're just learning where an employer needed you to be when you graduated, and the people who did figure it out when they graduated, they're already been promoted 2 times.
Yep.
They're already your boss's boss. Not that that's what we're going for, but they have lots more opportunities. So I think you're right. The threat here is not that students are never going to get a job. They will. If you get into a university like this one, you'll be okay in life. The threat and the risk and the bad outcome is that you miss really important opportunities early in your career that have really important consequences for the rest of your career.
Well, and to some of the stories from Maile and Kiera as well, I think if you do school wrong, and honestly, some of the ways that students are prompted to do school wrong here come from this place, right?
Yeah.
Come from the university, come from faculty, come from staff, come from a lot. I mean, let's just get that out there. This is the truth. You can squander a lot. And if you squander stuff as an undergraduate here, it can have a similar effect as being either underemployed or not progressing for the part of that early career that you need it to be. So,
For many students, the thought of doing UW well, it's like I got a 4.0, I was in honors, I did an internship, I did research for the faculty member, but you can do all those things and not be hireable, which I think I didn't know until I started engaging with this work. It seems like those are the things you do, right? That's the checklist that you talked about, Kiera. So, yeah, I think this is going to be helpful. I wish I had this when I was an undergrad.
Well, and we've talked about this in the past. I think the dimension that we forget is that there is an emotional and a moral dimension to that dilemma that you talked about, because it feels to a student unfair. If you do school well and you get a 4.0, that how can you not get a job? That like somebody lied to me, and that feels unfair in the world. Like you deserve a job, and this goes back to what you're saying about the difficulty of. We're not just saying you had a misperception, but the sense of justice in the world and what is fair and what you are owed, that is also unfortunately not true. So no, it turns out that no one does owe you a job. And you don't deserve a job simply because you finished a degree. We would like to live in a world where that was true, but that's not. And so I think that makes it that much harder for people to make that shift, right? Because this is the thing you know how to do, that you are successful at, being a student, and to accept that there might be some entirely different way of doing this part of your life is sort of unmoors you from the things that you are that you can take for granted, that you can be assured of, that you could describe in a more eloquent way than the words that are coming out right now from my mouth.
No, I think that's really
Save me, Miley.
very true from my experience, because I think I found gesture at the right time, and I think that was what was very shocking to me, was seeing how differently I could be doing things. And because, like you said, Liz, I was always someone who tried really hard to get good grades, and so realizing then, I don't have that as like a backbone to build a career off of. I do these other things. That was like my whole identity, and I think that's something we'll talk about in the future episodes of this podcast, because you have to become something other than just student. But that was difficult, I think, for me, because student was so much of just who I was as a person for, I think, most of my even elementary, middle school, high school life as well. So
I love it. I mean, to me, it feels like in this space, you're already bringing up so many topics that need unpacking: major, grades, faculty, the university, employers, expectations, what's owed to you, all of these things, what you get for doing school, right? The trade-offs and all the things and sacrifices. Yeah, there's so much here for us to actually unpack. So we got a lot of episodes coming. It's going to be good. It's not hopeless.
No, it's not. We actually do have a different way, right? So we have a different way to offer. We have a method. It involves story and mindset and challenge, and that is what we have gotten out of our years of work. But it won't be an easy answer, which should sound right. It should feel right once we get past the shock that, if you're going to change your identity, identities are not things that we change overnight. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an identity. And so we do have what we think is a way of doing that. So there is hope. There's hope. But that's not till like episode 5. It's hopeless for 4 episodes, for a mini season of hopelessness.
What episode is Star Wars: A New Hope?
That's true. That is episode 4.
There we go.
Maybe
And you got to
episode
stick around
4.
through
And it was
episode
3 episodes before that, so it's just like Star Wars. And then the best one will be episode 5, and then we'll go back to crap in episode 6.
No, don't say that. We'll break the mold.
Okay, we're just up at 5.
I thought we had to skip 4.
That's true. We do have to skip 4. That's no new
right.
hope.
4 is unlucky.
4 is death.
This is too many
Yeah, that's true.
conflicting
Oh my
identities.
God, it was death for all.
Well, at least we have a
wrong.
good team to do it with.